So by 1979, tensions were running really high within the ranks of America's most iconic band. After releasing 6 albums over the course of 7 years, touring relentlessly, and fielding larger-than-life expectations from fans and critics alike, these guys were all but burned out. Now, it all came to a head at a concert one night when a simple disagreement almost ended in an all-out brawl. Then the band split apart. They all went after their solo careers. And today we're going to zero in on the frontrunner, how his biggest solo hit came not long after the breakup. It gave the proverbial middle finger to the media in a scathing yet truthful attack. He was about 40 years ahead of his time on this one. It's coming up next. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember the Solid Gold dancers interpreting your favorite song on Solid Gold, make sure to subscribe below right now and click the bell so you never miss our content.
I'm All Right by Kenny Loggins is number 10.
This is the great nostalgic music time machine. You're going to dig it. Sometimes those Solid Gold dancers went a little far. Check out our Patreon below as well to become an honorary producer where you get your name in the video credits as well. We'd love to have your support. So today we're coming back to one of our newer shows on this channel. It's called Solo Venture. This is a series where we follow the adventures of vocalists who strike out on their own to pursue a solo song or record. Their careers may even span multiple albums. However, for this particular series, these legends also have to come back to their original band. Previous installments, we've covered Dennis DeYoung. He's told us the story of Desert Moon, Steve Perry O'Sherry, and Stevie Nicks' Edge of 17. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the story behind a scathing indictment on the press, a proverbial middle finger to the media. It's Don Henley's Dirty Laundry. From his solo debut, I Can't Stand Still. But really quick, let's get into how Don Henley came to step away from the Eagles and go it alone. So by the time the Eagles had released their 6th studio album, The Long Run, coming out in '79, everyone in the group knew that this band was in some trouble. Up to that point, the Eagles had already put together a storied history in which guitarist Bernie Leadon and bassist Randy Meisner both played a role. However, by the time The Long Run came out, the band consisted of Don Henley on drums, there was Glenn Frey on guitar and keyboard, Don Felder on guitar and organ, Joe Walsh on guitar and keyboard, and Timothy B. Schmidt on bass. And of course, everybody contributed to vocals, with mostly Frey and Henley taking over. For years, though, the Eagles had been running themselves ragged. 6 studio albums in less than a decade, a grueling touring schedule, and coping with constant pressure from their label, their critics, and their fans to continually one-up themselves. It had them completely burned out, especially after releasing the biggest album of their career in 1976, Hotel California. So everybody has their different stories. According to Don Felder, by the time they got to work on The Long Run, Don Henley and Glenn Frey, and really the band, they just couldn't handle each other anymore. Everyone seemed very frustrated with the monster success and the expectations that were on their shoulders. On July 31st, 1979, everything came to a head. There was a blow-up between Glenn Frey and Don Felder, and that put the final nail in the coffin, really. The Eagles were slated to play a benefit show for Senator Alan Cranston in Long Beach, California. It was an evening that would ever after be known as Long Night at Wrong Beach. Frey had set up the showcase. Felder wasn't really thrilled about the prospect of playing another political benefit. So tensions between the two escalated after Cranston's wife introduced herself to Felder. Don was cordial to her face, saying, "Hey, nice to meet you." But I guess after she walked away, he added under his breath, "I guess." Now, Glenn Frey was within earshot, and he heard the comment, and it really pissed him off. Frey then confronted Don Felder in the dressing room, and he really laid into him. Said Felder, "I don't know if it was the alcohol, the other drugs, or the fact that we've been on tour for so long, but he just blew up." Now, trying to keep the peace, he said he finally walked out. Don Felder would go on to say that just before we stepped on stage for the benefit, I turned to Glenn Frey and I said quietly, "You know, Glenn, what you did back there, you're an asshole for doing that. The drama then escalated on stage while the band was playing The Best of My Love.
I'll give you the best of my love.
I guess Glenn Frey came over to Felder and said, I quote, "I'm going to kick your ass when we get off this stage." Throughout the set, the two traded insults, and Glenn Frey started counting down the remaining songs until he was going to make good on that promise. Now, as the show progressed, the exchange got so bad, the sound technicians had to turn their mics down so that the audience wouldn't pick up on what was going on. By the end of the show, Glenn Frey and Don Felder were both boiling over, but they were successfully separated to different sides of the stage, and a brawl never happened. This is all actually in the documentary.
Experience, and I guess that would probably be the low part.
After the encore, the band members made a beeline, to their individual limos to get away from this madness. Felder, thinking that he was the only one left, he picked up a spare acoustic guitar and he repeatedly smashed it against a concrete column. Except when he was finished, he turned around and he saw Alan Cranston and his wife standing right behind him. He was horrified. Then just a few feet away from that was Glenn Frey. Frey assumed that Felder had purposely done this in front of the Cranstons, although Felder had said otherwise. After another angry exchange, the two bandmates went their separate ways. Glenn Frey said about the event, "That was when I knew I had to get out. I knew the Eagles were over about halfway through the Long Run album. I told myself I'd never go through this again. I could give you 30 reasons why, but let me be concise. I started the band, I got sick of it, and I quit." Now, at this point, the Eagles were still contractually required to release a live album. The band honored that obligation, but barely. At this point, no one was really talking to each other except when absolutely necessary. And while the plan was to assemble in Miami, Florida to work on this live project, Frey stayed in Los Angeles and FedExed his edits cross-country. Eagles Live, that was released in November of 1980. The band was effectively dead on arrival at this point. Now, when the record company found out the Eagles were breaking up, of course they were dumbfounded. Not only were they the most iconic band in America, they were also a massive revenue stream for the label. In fact, they refused to make any announcement to the fans and even offered the band members a cool $2 million bonus just to keep recording. But the dream was over. Around this time, Glenn Frey made a fateful call to his once close friend Don Henley to tell him that he was definitely out. Said Don Henley about it. It was a casual conversation that started out being about football. Then he interjected that he wanted to do something on his own. It pissed me off so bad because I always thought in my mind that when the group broke up, we'd get in a room together and get good and drunk and sort of cry on each other's shoulders and say, well, it was great and I love you and you're going to quit now. Or we're going to quit now. Regardless, though, Don Henley wished his friend and now ex-bandmate good luck, and he hung up the phone. It really was over. The Eagles were done. As we get into this period, right after the breakup, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that I always jam on this channel. Right now, you can get a brand new pair of prescription glasses for up to 80% off regular retail prices. You choose your style, your shape, your color, you customize your own distinct pair, and you can do a virtual try-on. Try them on, see how you look before you buy them. It's really awesome. Make sure to click the info button right here or down in our description to get a pair of Zennis today.
Can we do the operation? Is the head dead yet?
So after the breakup, as the days passed and his reality sunk in, Don Henley started into a downward spiral. Henley spent months pacing his house and playing the recluse, drinking, doing cocaine. The sudden and total lack of communication between Frey and himself after a decade-long partnership, that was a difficult blow. After the breakup, all five Eagles would launch their solo careers. Henley would actually be the third Eagle to release a solo album. This was after Joe Walsh and Glenn Frey. But even before that, Don Henley was already enjoying some post-Eagles success in the form of a duet with his ex-girlfriend Stevie Nicks. The song was, of course, Leather and Lace. Phenomenal song.
Forever, face to face.
Leather and Lace hit the airways on October 6th of 1981. It went to number 6 on the Hot 100 and number 9 on the Cashbox chart. Now, the following year, Don Henley would then release his solo debut, I Can't Stand Still. Henley would admit it was pretty frightening because, as we all know, when large famous groups break up, a lot of the members don't survive in solo careers. You can't just sit down and retire when you're 32. So I just sucked in my gut, I stuck out my chin, and decided to see if I could do it. Now, slick and contemporary, Henley opted to make synthesizers and drum machines a key part of this album. He wanted I Can't Stand Still to sound completely different from previous Eagles records, and it did. Now, the album would be co-produced by Greg Ladany and Danny Korchmar, the great Danny Korchmar, co-wrote many of the tracks with Don Henley. A couple of ex-Eagles and other big names would also appear on the album. There was Joe Walsh, Timothy B. Schmidt, J.D. Souther, Warren Zevon, Bob Seger, Steve Porcaro, and, of course, Steve Lukather. I Can't Stand Still would go gold by December 82, but it would actually fall short of platinum status. It's something his following 3 studio albums and greatest hits record, Actual Miles, would all accomplish. Said Don Henley, I sold like 650,000 copies or something, which is respectable, I guess, for a first album. I had a gold album and a gold single, so I was moderately satisfied. It might have had the momentum to sell 1 million copies, but really the first single fizzled. The obvious hit, Dirty Laundry, was held back for a song that meant a great deal to Don Henley, a song about illiteracy called Johnny Can't Read. Good song. A good song about an important issue, in fact. But, Dirty Laundry was the better choice to come out swinging.
You know the boys in the newsroom got a running bet.
So let's talk about it. Dirty Laundry is something of a Don Henley vendetta against the news media, and in particular, really, the tabloid-style, sensationalized journalism that was becoming prevalent at this time, which has taken over by this point. Henley was, and is, a very private person. He hated having reporters pry into his personal life. Said Henley about it, I'm a citizen and a taxpayer, just like everybody else, and I feel I'm entitled to some privacy and some dignity. I figure I owe my fans the best songs I can write, the best records I can make, and the best performances that I can give. Other than that, I feel like my life should be my own. Okay, so about the time the Eagles were breaking up, there was an incident that would actually play a very pivotal role in inspiring the song Dirty Laundry. In late November 1980, Don Henley threw a party at his LA home, and it got a little out of hand. Apparently one of the guests, a 16-year-old girl, overdosed on drugs, and she had to be resuscitated. Don Henley, he took a lot of heat for what happened, and he was ultimately arrested for contributing to the delinquency of a minor and also possession of marijuana, cocaine, and quaaludes. Now, Don Henley maintained that he did not know the girl. He didn't know who she was or that she was even at this party until things went south. Not an unreasonable claim, considering the sheer amount of groupies and friends of friends in attendance at this party. Now, Don Henley would later claim that he was a victim of police conspiracy. He said, I was stupid and naive, but it was obvious they wanted to hang me and put me away. In the end, he was fined $2,000 and ordered to attend drug counseling. The press, of course, ate this all up, and they went into a feeding frenzy, covering these events. Angry, Don Henley fired back with Dirty Laundry. He took aim at glamorous actors masquerading as television reporters and anchors, especially in California.
Well, I could have been an actor, but I wound up here.
The lyrics of the song poke fun at news anchors who were more concerned with how they look than accurately reporting the news. In particular, Henley references a bubble-headed bleach blonde.
We got the bubble-headed bleach blonde, comes on at 5.
Apparently, he actually had somebody in mind when he wrote that lyric. Though Henley didn't identify anyone by name, in one interview he did refer to a local ABC blonde anchorwoman. Connecting her to the lyrics, he said, she doesn't come on at 5, she comes on at 6, but I couldn't get 6 to rhyme with the lyric of the song.
Interviews of that, plus the weather with Dr. George on Eyewitness News in just about 31 minutes from now.
She can tell you about the plane crash with a gleam in her eye.
Now, with this little bit of information, it's actually easy to deduce that he had Christine Lund in mind. She was the only local blonde newscaster on at that time. In terms of writing the song, Henley had a co-author, the album's co-producer, Danny Korchmar. Of course, I mentioned him earlier, great writer. A key contributor to Henley's solo work, Danny Korchmar said the two often discussed at length what Don wanted to say on various things before they even started writing. Korchmar remembered that they sat on the title Dirty Laundry for months before it ever came together. Said Korchmar, Don had this idea for Dirty Laundry, that he wanted to write a song where he took on the media and local TV. So with my organ, one night I set it up and I started banging out that part that you hear on the record. I was up in the wee hours of the morning banging away on this thing, and that's when I recorded it. And when I played it for Don the next day, I said, I think this is Dirty Laundry. He said, yeah, that's it. Record it and let's get going. Now, after that, Don Henley drove around in his car, listening to the track, coming up with lyrical ideas. I guess this was common practice for Don Henley. He was doing that with Mike Campbell, listening to Boys of Summer, and he almost drove his Porsche off of the freeway because it was so awesome. It was not only inspired by Don Henley's own experience, though, but it was also his take on the intrusive coverage of the death of John Belushi and Natalie Wood that happened around that time. His lyrics were scathing, but very appropriate. When Henley says, just give me something I can use, people love it when you lose. They love Dirty Laundry. And then when he describes the people who report the news with, well, I could have been an actor, but I wound up here. I just have to look good. I don't have to be clear.
I just have to look good. I don't have to be clear.
And then in verse 3, he comes right out with it when he says, we got the bubblehead of Bleach Blonde, comes on at 5. She can tell you about the plane crash with a gleam in her eye. It's interesting when people die, they love Dirty Laundry.
It's interesting when people die.
And later when he talks about the boys in the newsroom running a bet about life and death here, can they get the widow on the set for an interview? I mean, this is crazy stuff. He describes some truly soulless people who report the news looking absolutely fabulous. He sings about people who won't let the truth get in the middle of a good story. Especially in the chorus where he says, kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down, kick them when they're stiff, kick them all around. Doesn't matter if they're living or dead. All that matters is getting the ratings.
Kick 'em when they're up, kick 'em when they're down, kick 'em when they're stiff, kick 'em all around.
For me, the best part is in the final verses where Henley says, dirty little secrets, dirty little lies. We got our dirty little fingers in everybody's pie.
We got our dirty little fingers in everybody's pie.
Love to cut you down to size. We love Dirty Laundry.
Love to cut you down to size. We love dirty.
And then the last line. When it's said and done, we haven't told you a thing. We all know that crap is king. Give us Dirty Laundry.
Know that crap is king. Give us dirty laundry.
It's just amazing. Henley has always had a way of seeing the future, a musical prophet. I'm talking about songs like New York Minute, Boys of Summer, Sunset Grill, or even The End of the Innocents.
I'm driving by your house. Though I know you're not home. End of the innocence.
It's most prevalent here as he wrote a song that is tailor-made for the day that we live in. I mean, with 24/7 news, this song describes both sides of the table. Those who report the news and those who devour it. It's a great lesson. And just because we're on the subject, I'm going to quote another song. Stop watching the news because the news contrives to frighten you, to make you feel sad and alone, to make you feel that your mind is not your own.
To make you feel that your mind isn't your own.
I should also mention that Dirty Laundry has some very interesting guitar contributions. Not only did Danny Korchmar play the basic parts, but Joe Walsh and Toto Steve Lukather both added solos. Of According to Lukather, his Dirty Laundry solo is a favorite of his. Now, Dirty Laundry entered the Billboard Hot 100 on October 30th, 1982, and it spent a total of 19 weeks on the chart. It topped out at number 3. That actually makes it the highest charting song of Henley's on the Hot 100. It also went to number 1 on the U.S. mainstream rock chart. Now, internationally, Dirty Laundry struggled in the UK. It stalled at number 59. Did reach number 7 in New Zealand and number 2 in South Africa. Went all the way to number 1 in Canada. Since its initial run, Dirty Laundry has appeared in a handful of movies and TV shows. There was Miami Vice, To Die For, which is pretty much the movies about the song in a way. And there's Cold Case.
Anybody in America unless you're on TV.
Was a chance she would die for.
Dirty Laundry has also been covered by John Mayer, Nickelback, Waddy Wachtel, Lisa Marie Presley, and Toto. So clearly Don Henley was off to a great start post-Eagles. But what about the rest of the band? How did they fare? All would have solo careers of varying commercial success. But of all the Eagles albums, Henley would have the most successful and consistent solo career. He turned in 4 Hot 100 Top 10 singles and 11 Top 10 singles on the U.S. mainstream rock chart, including 4 number 1s and 2 number 2s. And then following years of speculation, the Eagles formally reunited in 1994. The lineup comprised of Henley, Fry, Walsh, Felder, and Schmidt to start off. Commenting on the reunion, a little tongue-in-cheek, Fry said, "For the record, we never broke up. We just took a 14-year vacation." The ensuing tour spawned a live album called Hell Freezes Over, of course named for Henley's recurring statement that the group would get back together when hell freezes over. The record actually debuted at number 1 on the Billboard album chart. Not a surprise. It included 4 new studio songs, but you know, that's another story for another day. You know, the 80s, it was a time of solo Eagles, flying solo. And you just don't get much better than Dirty Laundry. It's a song that describes the world we live in more than the year that it was released in. As Don Henley says, more than ever, crap is king. Let me ask you this, though. Would you rather that the Eagles had never broken up, giving us another 3 or 4, maybe even 5 albums in the 80s and early 90s? Or would you rather keep the collective solo works of the long run 5? Let us know in the comments. It'd be a cool discussion. Leave us a comment as well about Don Henley and Dirty Laundry. What are your memories of the song? What do you think about it in terms of him seeing the future 40 years forward? If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords.